I'm going to give you a completely original YouTube script in the style of a commentary-driven piece, built from the core idea of Rahel Solomon's exit from CNN but reframed with fresh perspective, analysis, and opinion. It won't be a paraphrase or a direct retelling, it will feel like a creator thinking out loud about what her departure signals for cable news, career paths, and the media ecosystem. Rahel Solomon exits CNN, a case study in early morning media dynamics and the churn of talent in a changing industry. Personally, I think the timing is revealing. The morning hour is a battleground for viewership attention, branding, and the delicate balance between hard business news and approachable storytelling. What makes this really interesting is how Solomon's trajectory, rising through business reporting, anchoring one of CNN's first daily hours, and now stepping into an unknown next chapter, mirrors a broader pattern in journalism, the rise of personal brands built on credibility and pace, not just the network's name. In my opinion, this move is less about one person leaving and more about a systemic recalibration of what it means to be a public-facing journalist in an era of rapid media experimentation. Let's unpack what's going on, idea by idea, and layer in some sharper analysis and questions you might not be hearing in the usual news digest. Idea 1: the morning anchor as the network's opening act, and what Solomon represented. Commentary, interpretation, and nuance. The early morning slot is the first impression a network makes of the day. Solomon didn't just read headlines, she framed the day's economic context, inflation, and job market signals in a way that made viewers feel they were getting a compact briefing before work. That's a rare skill, making complexity feel approachable without doozing down the facts. Personally, I think the choice to open with a business-focused anchor reflects a shift toward treating economic news as essential daily weather, something you check on the way to coffee. What this really signals is a belief at CNN that viewers want a trusted, calm voice to anchor the start of their day during uncertain times. One thing that immediately stands out is how such a role doubles as brand building for the anchor themselves. Being the dependable morning face is a powerful path to influence and future opportunities. Broader perspective, this move invites us to consider how networks monetize morning trust. If a host becomes synonymous with a reliable, early morning read on the economy, their personal voice can outlive the program. It also raises questions about succession planning, talent mobility, and the extent to which networks cultivate individuals as properties, not just programs. If you take a step back and think about it, this is less about a single departure and more about a pipeline being reimagined for a digital-first audience that still values the tactile ritual of turning on the TV at dawn. Idea 2: the career arc from CNBC to CNN to a new path, what it tells us about media geography and specialization. Commentary, interpretation, and nuance. Solomon's resume, CNBC roots, a shift to CNN International, then anchoring a CNN daytime slot, reads like a deliberate travelogue through business news ecosystems. What's interesting here is how specialization in finance and markets translates into credibility across networks with different editorial cultures. From my perspective, this isn't a move sideways so much as a signal that financial journalism has become a portable credential. The fact that she also has a solid academic foundation in finance from St. John's and a journalism master from Medill isn't accidental, it underlines how technical competence can coexist with broadcast presence. What people don't realize is that trust in business news often hinges on how clearly a host translates jargon into real-world impact, earnings, rates, and the everyday prices that affect households. Broader perspective, the journalism industry's talent markets are more fluid than ever. Talent mobility across networks can accelerate the cross-pollination of styles, the brisk CNBC cadence meeting CNN's broader storytelling approach. This suggests a future where anchors aren't tied to a single brand for life but become portable currencies, each move potentially expanding their voice and influence. A detail I find fascinating is how such transitions influence audience expectations. Viewers may demand the same level of rigor in a different packaging or tone, pushing networks to recalibrate on-air personalities and show formats. Idea 3: the what's next question as a strategic pivot rather than a resignation. Commentary, interpretation, and nuance. The announcement that there's more to come signals anticipation and agency. It reframes a departure from a job as the opening of a new chapter, not a loss. In my opinion, this is a masterclass in brand management. Communicate uncertainty with optimism, preserve the core audience by implying continuity, and leave room for a fresh proposition that could be more flexible in a changing media climate. What this really suggests is that Solomon might pursue opportunities where her voice can shape a broader narrative beyond a single show, perhaps digital extensions, advisory roles, or a hybrid media venture that leverages both civics and finance literacy. People often misread a next chapter line as vague ambiguity. Instead, it can be a strategic invitation to reinvent the coastlines of one's career. Broader perspective, departures like this push networks to rethink their development pipelines. If top morning talent has real agency to pivot quickly, what's stopping other anchors from leveraging similar leverage? The bigger trend here is talent-driven disruption. Audiences increasingly follow a creator's voice, not just a network's cross-promotional machine. This could accelerate a shift toward talent-led, multi-platform brands that survive beyond a single channel or show. Idea 4. The audience as the silent fulcrum, what this means for trust, routine, and attention. Commentary, interpretation, and nuance. Morning viewers depend on consistency. Solomon's credibility in explaining inflation and the job market created a routine, a sense that the day's economic weather was being forecast with care. If a trusted anchor exits, it creates a ripple for viewers who calibrate their mornings around that cadence. What makes this really interesting is how audiences adapt. Do they drift toward other morning programs, or do they seek new anchors who offer a similar blend of warmth and rigor? From my perspective, trust built in the first hour compounds over time, and a single exit can fragment a viewer's morning ritual, potentially reshaping engagement metrics in a meaningful way. Broader perspective, this change nudges networks to invest more in narrative continuity, brand cues, recurring segments, and predictable pacing, so audiences feel a stable anchor even as people rotate. It also spotlights the tension between traditional broadcast habits and an evolving appetite for shorter, more digestible content across social and streaming formats. A detail I find fascinating is whether Solomon's next move will maintain a similar rhythm or adopt a more modular, audience-driven structure that thrives on interactivity and audience input. Deeper insight, the meta-story behind the exit. Commentary, interpretation, and nuance. This isn't merely about one person leaving CNN, it's a data point in a broader meta-trend, the erosion of rigid, network-centric identities in favor of versatile personal brands that can straddle platforms and formats. What this raises a deeper question about is how legacy news organizations will reinvent their talent ecosystems to stay relevant when the audience can access a global pool of narrators with diverse storytelling gifts. If you take a step back and think about it, the future of journalism could hinge on a few anchor authors who own a cross-platform narrative, print, digital video, podcasts, live streams, while being synonymous with credibility across contexts. What this implies, networks may need to rethink onboarding, development, and succession planning to maintain morning rhythm without losing the freshness that talent brings. It also implies a more dynamic economy for journalists, where career progressions are less about climbing a single ladder and more about building a portfolio of influence that remains portable. Connection to bigger trend, the shift toward creator-led media, where individuals curate their own brand ecosystems, mirrors the broader digital economy. This isn't about abandoning traditional outlets, it's about transforming them into launchpads for multi-hyphenate careers. A detail I find fascinating is how this dynamic could spur more experimental formats, short-form data explainers, live audience Q&As, and cross-border collaborations that keep viewers engaged while expanding a journalist's reach. Closing thought, opening a new chapter is both risky and exhilarating. For Rahel Solomon, the exit from CNN marks not an end but an opportunity to redefine what it means to be a trusted voice in a media landscape that prizes speed, clarity, and personal authenticity. If you're watching as an audience member or a budding journalist, the takeaway is simple: credibility isn't tethered to one mailbox. It's a portable asset you carry across platforms, showing up whenever you decide to tell a more complete, more compelling story. Questions to consider with the audience. Do you follow hosts or networks, or do you follow the voice you trust, regardless of where they appear? How do you think morning news formats will evolve in the next few years as talent becomes more portable? What would you want from a future Rahel Solomon-led project? A tight daily briefing, a deeper dive into business topics, or something hybrid with audience participation? If you'd like, I can tailor this script to a specific length, adjust the balance of facts to commentary, or shift the tone toward a more provocative, media critique angle. Would you prefer a tighter 6 to 8 minute version with sharper, punchier takes, or a longer 12 to 15 minute deep dive with more nuanced analysis?